Hi, this is Carson with Troy, and I have with me Luke Messa. Luke is a science fiction fantasy author. His first series, Terra Incognita, is out. The fourth book just came out just, I guess, last month now, in August. Is that correct?
That is, yep, August 12th.
And he partnered with Ben Wolfe to do a lit RPG novel, Rickshaw Riot, which was the released lit RPG con. Is that when that came out?
So that was technically like a pre-release, early access.
Okay.
The official launch, we don't have a date nailed down, but it's likely going to be first quarter, early next year.
Awesome. So I got a special edition. I'm gonna say that.
You're in an elite few. You can only get those by seeing us in person. So
So that's pretty cool. He has the name Dark Legend Master. That's his secret name. But Luke, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and about Terra Incognita.
all right, sure. And again, I just want to thank you for having me on here, and to all your listeners. This is Dirk Lasermaster is my podcast alias. So, but no, I in a snapshot, I writing was something that snuck up on me earlier in my life. I didn't really have an interest in it until one day I was like, hey, the story I wanted didn't exist, right? So I'm like, why don't I try my hand at writing it? And I think I was about 25 years old, and I wrote the first page, and it was like something clicked, and I was like, oh, I think this is what I want to do. Fast forward to 2019 was when I started taking it really seriously, and actually, it was a big year for me. It was the year I encountered Christ, which is biggest part of my life, and a lot changed for me. And it was something that I asked God about if I could write, if I wanted to write, and He introduced me to Ben. And once I started working with Ben, he really guided me and mentored me and refined me in the writing technique, and that's when I wrote Terra Incognita. And it started as a short story that I kept making longer and longer and longer because I'm like, hey, I'm really kind of falling in love with the concepts here, and I think I can make something out of this. And it was at that time that Ben had made some connections with Athon Books and had his own series published with them, and said, hey, the series is good. I think it'd be right up their alley, and I'd like to refer you. And so that's kind of how I broke into the writing world in a snapshot. And if we want to talk more about that, we can. But the series itself is military, sci-fi, space opera, but it blends a lot of genres in that sense, or a lot of themes, because I don't like to just stick too rigidly to one theme. And yeah, from there I've had many different forays into the writing world, into independent work, and then Ben and I just co-wrote a book, and we're looking at six books officially, and potential collaborations in the future. And so yeah, that's it. If that answers the question, that's a snapshot of my whole deal.
No, that's awesome. That's fantastic. When I interviewed Ben a couple episodes ago, he mentioned you and mentioned how much you've grown in the last, 6 years as a writer. And so I was like, oh, I need to talk to Luke to see, some of his habits. What has he done? Having that persistence to continue going until, you made it to a published author, not only with Athon, which is doing amazing things right now, um,
Totally.
but partnering up with Ben to create a unique lit RPG novel. So thank you once again for coming on. I really appreciate it, and hopefully me and my listeners can learn from you what some of the things you've done. So you said you kind of took it seriously in 2019 after prayer, um, after that confirmation. What were some of your habits back then in your writing, and how have they changed over time?
Oh, that is a good question. I always had the habit of I'm a morning person, and that seems to be creatively and intellectually when I'm at my freshest. Uh, I've tried after afternoon, and I'm only good for like grunt work. Um, so I always wrote in the morning. It was trying like the first thing. It was the first thing I went to do. And after my encounter with God, I would go to Him first, and then go to write. So, and I've maintained that habit that it's like a work day. So it's the first thing I go to. It's when I go fresh. The day is open. You feel like you have a lot ahead of you. I am a coffee drinker, so I like the smell of coffee, and that's when the work day is getting started. So I guess unintentionally, I realized that I prioritized the time when I had the most to give and to pour into the habit. And I was working another job, obviously the day job, when I first started writing Terra. So some days that meant I only had an hour or two in the morning to write. And I would try to get up at least like 5:30, 6 o'clock, depending, so that I could grind out a little bit. And some days I had all day. And I think I was better back then about taking time off and understanding that like even a day or two, like around the weekend, was like, okay, I don't need to write now. Even though I could use the whole day for it, I need to refresh my mind. And then especially, as coming to faith and understanding the importance of Sabbath and rejuvenating and resting. So I've kept that, and that's definitely helpful. Is sometimes it feels like you're going to get more done if I just boom, boom, boom every single day. And statistically, it shows that's actually not true for
Right.
humans. So implementing those rhythms and staying focused is one of the hardest things for me because I don't know, even the older I get, it's just like I'm looking for any, modern culture has just conditioned us to wander all over the place. So making sure I shut out distractions as best I can. I'll put my phone on work mode. I'll like even at this time I can eat breakfast and I want to be done eating breakfast here so that I can get back to work and managing your time with that the same way you would any real job. It's you have to treat it the same way. You really do. And even if it only lasts 3 hours, work in that way as if you would like it really matters because it does. And then it's very cliche, but the consistency and it builds good habits. Then of course I'm a big advocate of. I'm not saying everyone needs to be an athlete, but like some sort of physical exertion because it is good for the mind. It's good for the emotions. So cultivating that habit. And sometimes you can, if you're stuck on a story or a writer's block, that can break through that because your mind relaxes a bit. And sometimes you're running or you're doing your martial art or whatever it is you like to do. You're lifting and you have this inspiration. And those habits I've kept consistently since I started writing. What's changed the most as I've gotten older is just I think having a better work ethic and understanding that I don't always need to feel it or be really inspired to write something quality because sometimes it feels like, oh, if I'm not really feeling the scene, it might not be that good. It's like, no, you can still do it. You just not every moment's going to be like the fireworks excitement of writing or creating or painting or craft, whatever your craft is.
Hmm.
So being more disciplined about not listening to the monkey brain and saying like, well, I don't feel it. It's like, well, no, it's a work day. You couldn't tell another boss you didn't feel like it, you'd get fired. So if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. You just have to be more self-accountable than, to a boss or somebody like that. And I love you said it's cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. It's true. Like consistency matters, and like being able to do something consistently, um, for a long time is hard to do.
Yes, it is. I don't know what the studies are, but it's like it takes so many days or weeks to actually make a lasting habit where you're more inclined to keep it instead of falling away um, and seeing that's true. So yeah.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna um say, with Terra, you said that you wanted to read a series that wasn't out there yet, and so you created it. What was the seed? What was the genesis of the story?
Oh, like the Genesis for Terra.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'll be very of a full disclosure. It was sort of to anyone who's familiar. There's a specific character in there. His name's Leo, and I thought of him before I thought of any other part of that story. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool to have like a really sick acrobatic Captain America space witcher? And I think those were almost the exact words. It was something profoundly asinine the way I thought it, but it was like the concept seemed cool to me, and I'm like, well, how would we make this work? Because I like to also it's science fiction, yes, but I like to base it that it, in a sense, even though it's improbable, it's not impossible. And so I had a lot of different interests in the limits of the human body, what we're capable of. I'm like, so what would it be if we were elevated to our peak, or how far beyond that could we go? Or even like Roger Bannister, who broke the 4-minute mile record. They said it couldn't be done medically, And he was a medical student and he believed it could, and he did it. And as soon as he did it, people just started getting 358, 357, and so I was fascinated by the limits of the human body, and then what kind of soldier would we design in space? So that was kind of the genesis of it. And I liked I always liked the space exploration. God made a lot of crazy worlds. I'm like, what would it be like if we could go to those? There's a world where it rains glass sideways because there's superheated, silica in the atmosphere, and it's just like, what happens if we have to go there for some reason? And so I had all these neat ideas, but no plot line to like chain them together. And so when I began as a short story, it was almost like my science fiction diary, for lack of a better term. And there was a lot of info dumping and exposition, and it was pretty awful. But it gave me a way to voice those concepts. And so after submitting it and getting some feedback but rejection on it, I was like, okay, but I really like this story. So I started building a conspiracy theory. I started building this around it, and it was like laying bricks of a foundation that eventually was like, oh, I have a foundation here. I have a house. And that was the draft that I ended up giving to Ben and working with him on, or him working with me on. And I'm a bit of a pantser, as the term goes. So I did a lot of writing into the dark, and I stand by that method. I say it can work, but you can also cause yourself a lot of problems with it.
Right.
But no, that was the genesis of that story, because I loved science fiction, but it felt very dry. It felt almost like a neglected genre, or it felt very, maybe I just didn't have enough exposure. I don't know. I just wanted more of a grand space story with those elements, so I set about to make it.
That's fantastic. Now, your series deals with lots of uncharted worlds, both literal and metaphysical or metaphorical. What was the seed um, that first pushed you towards writing in general?
Oh man,
And
that's
what was some
that's
of the stuff that, that hidden stuff that came out of you that you weren't expecting?
yeah, because as a kid, I didn't like writing. Well, I didn't like work. Kids. Um, I think so. Through my teenage years and into early adulthood, I actually had a pretty severe bouts of depression and lots of ideas and questions churning around in me that I didn't know how to express, because those topics can be hard. First of all, you don't want to air that out there, and then also some people just can't. Respect for them, but they can't go there with you. They don't
Right.
ask those questions, and then that coupled with a high creative side. I've always had a very very intense creative side, very visual thinker. That I was like, writing aside is just a great medium though for bringing to life things that aren't, or you have a visual concept I can't quite manifest, that doesn't quite exist here, but I can describe it and someone else can share it. And I reflected on how amazing that was, reading people's stories, where it's like we're picturing the same character, same virtue, same personality, but the appearance could be totally different to us, even though you described him, right?
Right.
Um, and so, having never really written anything longer than I had to for school, it was just that one day where it's like I found myself watching some movies and playing some games and feeling like there were missed opportunities, or wouldn't it have been cool if they did this. And not that it wasn't great on its own right, but I'm like, I kept wanting to tweak it as just a practice, almost like fan fiction, but not the creepy fan fiction. There's those corners of the internet, and so it's like, well, just try it. And I sat down on Apache Open Office because it was free. I was 23 and broke, and like I said, I wrote that first page, and it was actually a fantasy. It was the beginning of a fantasy series that someday will see the light of day. But it just, it was like something clicked, something turned on. I'm like, this is a great way to express. This is a great way to vent, and to turn something that seems unproductive and just churning mental thoughts into art. And I'm like, have you ever seen the movie Zoolander?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what if I could do that for a career? Be ridiculously good looking, but I could write for a career. And that's just how I started writing. And from there, it was the hobby you couldn't tear me away from. Like if I had some free time, I was writing.
That's
So
cool. Now, the phrase Terra Incognita means unknown land.
Hmm.
Beyond the geography, what deeper unknowns did you want your characters or readers to confront?
Ooh, man, you ask good questions, man. I appreciate that. That's because as I'm sure you surmised, yeah, the title is only it's more related to what the readers experience or to what the characters experience than strictly like a physical unknown land. But it felt like it went both ways. I definitely in the simplest sense, I definitely wanted to. It was my hope and my prayer that I could take the reader on a unique journey. We all want to do that as creatives, right? Whether we're painting, whether we're writing, filmmaking, we want to take you on a journey you've never gotten to participate on before. And while it's unknown, though, we want parts of it to be relatable, so you can really immerse yourself. Wanted you to meet characters that are new to you, but that you felt as though you could befriend right away, that you had confidence in right away. And from my character standpoint, the land unknown is what is ahead is unknown, but do you choose to still express virtue, goodness, compassion? Do you still maintain your character? And I guess it ties into the faith element. Do you still trust that though the land is unknown, this is worth doing, this is worth exploring, this is worth seeing? That there's not only things to see, but experiences that may be unknown. Now, as I'll be very raw and real, and I hope this is okay for your listeners, but obviously with depression comes very dark thoughts. And I think everyone knows what I'm getting at. Now, having moved past that, I have experienced so much that was unknown to me between loving community of believers in Jesus, of wonderful nature experiences and views and people such as yourself and my Ben Wolf, my dear friend, and so much that I would never have known I could have experienced. And even now, when there's difficult times, having that faith that there is that much more, and then as obviously since I believe in the life to come, beyond. And I would hope that in some way that would inspire people who are having trouble, who maybe feel in a rut or are really wrestling with mental health, or even just a sense of longing for more, that it could be like, it's there, it's there. But it requires faith, it requires work, it requires being uncomfortable, and hopefully maintaining a virtue and a compassion and a desire to make the world better in whatever little way you can. Um, it may seem like unrelated elements, but to me, there is a lot contained in that. And that was my hope. And it seemed like a fitting title. It was a placeholder, but it just stuck.
Oh, that's awesome. No, that's fantastic. No, yeah, thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. Um, you know, balancing science and story, it can be difficult with science fiction. How much research went into the science or history behind Terra, and how much did you balance accuracy and storytelling?
Man, yeah, that's a good one. Some of the reviews on Amazon would argue not very much with one part of it, but uh, no, I would say in some respects, for some elements, a lot more than someone reading would assume. Um, it's too much to the point of where it just felt like my head was this big, and I was like, okay, whoa! I just had to learn how mitochondria in a cell functions. And then other times where you could say there's maybe certain military protocols that I could have done a little more work on, but we learn and grow. Uh, I did a lot into biology and cosmology for the concepts of the worlds, for how the zetas, the engineered humans, work. I don't specifically explain it in the book, but there are theoretical ways to make that happen, from the DNA strain from tardigrades that theoretically could bind to, it's probably not going to be, but in theory, parts of it could work. And then what that process would be like to a human body. So I did a lot of, and then I had to do a lot of like metric and imperial conversions, and that was always fun. So I endeavored to do a lot of research, nothing deep dive to, like you would in college, but even like, okay, the Alcubierre drive and that theory, so that you could technically do faster than light travel What sort of energy would that require? What would that look like? And I sort of downplay what essentially the cost of it with the dark energy and how you would feel it, because I just wanted to be able to travel around space. But the theory and the concept itself works. So yeah, I endeavored to do as much as I could there, even to what wounds can a human survive, and what would be the repercussions. What even I've had certain injuries myself that I can relate it to people I've talked to that, I had friends who were in the military and talked about weapon reloading and bullet speed, and just why would this projectile be better? And a lot of it came in unintentionally, but it really served, I think, to help add to the story. And then the second part of your question was balancing that realism with fiction.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a kind of, it can be so arbitrary. And that's, I think, the benefit of having a good editor and beta readers and people whose opinions and thoughts you can trust, who give you that constructive criticism. Because I don't know how much, like, sometimes there's some science fiction where, as amazing as it is, like how intricate and how detailed it is and very realistic, it kind of loses me in that, because I'm like, okay, it's hard, we get it, that space is big. And so I try to have some elements of realism, but I want to keep the story moving. I want to keep the main thing the main thing. And for me, a big part of that is the characters, like the character development, their interactions. That's one of the biggest elements for me. And so it's also like I try to stay in my lane, and the things that I've been told I do well and that I like doing, I try to lean into that, while not sacrificing as much as I can the integrity of, like, okay, I need to do my due diligence here,
Hmm.
make this convincing, because then, if those parts of the story fall apart, they detract from the highlights. And I'm still learning how to do that well. It's something that I think I will spend a lifetime learning to do well. So
Well, let's kind of jump into reader immersion. What sort of techniques or tricks or tips did you use to make readers feel like they were stepping into this world and this place right alongside your characters?
um, as a blanket way, and I would just advice for writing, it was like I was excited about the story and the characters. And now, granted, that's not to make decisions in a vacuum, but if you're strictly writing to market or what you think is going to be good, you'll lose a lot of that. So it's like I was excited to meet and be with these characters. I was excited to see the decisions they'd make and the situations they'd be in, as a blanket term.
Hmm.
Then from little logistical things is just simple fun things like colloquial terms or colloquialisms. I think the word is, I might have that wrong. Patterns of speech, parallel. So even for the Zetas, right, their senses are very high. Like their hearing is very acute. And you could almost relate that to people who have sensory overload or neurodivergency. And so in a sense, they behave very differently because of their perspective. And now it's a fiction, it's because they're elevated genetics, but also I think that's something we can all relate to. Like, I see the world differently, I think the world differently, or just because I express emotion in this way and it's not the same as you, doesn't mean I don't have it.
Right.
And so a lot of those dynamics at play and how characters respond to them, also just humor. Like, humans, we bond so intensely over humor. And it's and working that in a as a relatable way, or as how, to me, I always relate to characters more that have a sense of humor, and it makes me feel a part of it. And when someone can make you laugh, we kind of just like them more, um I included the use, like, I thought about the cell phones, right? I'm like, have we peaked? The military and anyone official would have something far more advanced, and for those reasons. But, like, what if the civilian population just kept cell phones? Because if it's not broke, don't fix it. And so there's little, even the music, just little hints and tricks that remind you, like, oh yeah, like, I could relate, I could live in this world, this is close to my world, but it's also just removed enough. And I've been told from readers that the parts that I did well, so I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but that's what I've been told. And I think just being able to make the world relatable in subtle ways that doesn't feel like it's dragging it down or shoehorned in. And it's done a lot through characters, in my opinion, but then again, little things in the world, like still having phones or still having this, or just average lifestyle. Like, we all have to live, we all have to sleep, we all have to eat. um, I guess that's how I would think about that immersion.
Hmm.
And obviously, there's some things you have to have that suspension of disbelief, but uh, it's even if it's a little unbelievable, if you can just kind of give a little coat of paint, it's like, no, no, this is plausible. And if people enjoy the story and characters, they're much more willing to do that, as I have with certain things where I'm like, that wasn't scientific at all, but this is fire. Like I gotta keep going. So
That's awesome. So, I mean, you wrote this story, it expanded from a short story. Um, how did that relationship with Ben come about? And when you gave him, your first draft, your second draft, or whatever draft it was, what were some of those recommendations to help you get it published worthy?
awesome question. Yeah. Because that can be that's a sometimes a hard thing for creatives. I met Ben at a Comic-Con in Milwaukee, and I had been invited by my cousin because she was like, "Oh, hey, I know you're trying to write," and she went to Comic Cons a lot. She's into all that culture and big geek, knows all the fandoms. Really, really cool lady. And so she invited me along, and that was something also that I have to give credit to God for and thank. He had made me very open to new experiences. I was very reclusive and shut down, and after God entered my life, I just became more like, well, why not try? Why not see what's out there? And so it worked out. And she's like, there's a panel called The Secret World of Self-Publishing. And I know that probably be helpful to you. I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome. So we went to the panel, and Ben and his wife, Carice, were giving the talk. And it was very helpful information. I really appreciated what they offered. And at the time, he was doing a lot of freelance editing for fiction, science fiction and fantasy. And I was like, that's just a logical next step. I have a manuscript. I need someone to look at it. I need someone in this world. I need to start working with someone. Because at that time I had submitted it to a few different places and been rejected. And so I didn't really know what next step to take, but I was like, boom, that's it. And so I went to Ben's booth. He invited anyone to come to his booth afterward and talked to them a bit, had a wonderful conversation, told him I had a finished manuscript. So he gave me his information, and I emailed him the draft, and he's very good at what he does. And so he's like, what I usually do is a test edit. I usually know within at least the first chapter, usually the first 5, 6 pages, what kind of edit you'll need and where it is. And based on that test edit, we can go from there. And if we want to hire me, and so I got the test edit back, and I'll say this, that the first draft was a lot of cool concepts, like I said, but it was a terrible book. It was a terrible book. And I started reading his comments on it, and it was like I just went really still because it was kind of like, we all want to think like we have gold right out of the gate, like we all, and maybe we do, but it needs to be refined and smelted, and it's but we all want to be that unicorn. And
Right.
so it was this neat, and this is another thing that God did in my heart, is like a sense of humility, where it was like I calm settled in, and I realized that this is not a good book. This needs a lot of work, but it can work. I've got something good here. So it was that sort of humility being taken down a notch, but also that encouragement of like, no, no, I can do this. I want to do this. And I would say that to any author, be ready to receive the hard things, be ready to be corrected, because that discomfort, that frustration, though, is the doorway to many beautiful things. And like I said, glory to God in that, because that was not who I used to be. I used to get shut down, like, nah, I'm awesome. What are you talking about? And so I did some thinking on it, and I was like, okay, how would I start this? How did the books I like start? What makes a good start? And Ben really got me thinking, because he made comments in a way that was it got you thinking. He's a good mentor. He's a good teacher. And uh, he wants people to, he wants to help people be better. And so it was very thought provoking commentary, and I was reflecting on that. So it got me thinking in the right ways. And I started rewriting it because I'm like, this needs a whole rework. I'm like, I'll take the core ideas, the core plot, but I need a rework. And the characters can be better. And so I just started rewriting it. And in a sense, that was fun, like a new adventure, right? Where it's like, oh, I can take this old thing, and I can let it go and take what works, and I can go on a new adventure. And so at the time, I was working two jobs in the finances, and Ben was very flexible and willing to work with me. He's like, you can send me in sections, you can pay in sections. He goes, you work with me, I'll work with you. And so I sent him the first section, and he started working on it. And it wasn't a couple of days later, I got a text. He said, "You did a lot of work on this. This is good. You did a lot of change. You took the advice. You well done." And that was incredibly encouraging. And I really appreciated that he said that. Yeah. And so that was kind of a refining process. And then it was cool because I'd get say a section of it back, and I could look at what he's edited and said, and then it kind of helped me tweak going forward, and I could get a little bit better, a little cleaner. And we went through a couple months this way of doing this with the first book until it was like, poof, manuscript completed. It's done. After all this, like it was a little over a year of laboring over this thing, and then yeah, it was kind of neat to sit there like, oh, I've got a finished book, and I feel pretty good about it. So
And so the decision to go with Athon, instead of
yeah,
publishing it, going that route yourself, Athon, even though they are a company, they're still kind of considered indie because they're not one of the big five, but they are growing fast. But they are a publishing house. So like, what was the decision like going to them instead of doing it yourself?
yeah. I think I hadn't really even considered doing it myself. It was a loose thing in the back of my head, especially because Ben was like, if that's something you need and want help with, I will help you with it. And so I was like, okay, I always had that avenue. He's way more experienced in this, and I can learn from that and do that. But I think it was pretty close to having the first one finished, or I had just finished it, and I was about to conclude his edits and my rework when he himself ended up landing this deal for his Ghost Mine series with Athon. And he's like, at the time, it was like cautiously optimistic, wanted to see how this went. And, Athon, they're great people, great company. And so he had a positive experience with it. And he just said, listen, they got my Ghost Mine. And at the time, they were doing a lot more science fiction. And he's like, I'd love to refer you if that's okay. And to me, it was just, it was answered prayer. It was so exciting. It was so unreal to have that opportunity that I confess I didn't really consider another option. I mean, I thought like they might not like it, so I'll have other options. But it was like, why wouldn't I do this? Why wouldn't I throw it out there and try
Right.
it? And especially too because of the indie scene and how it was basically like him referring was just like, oh, here's Steve, here's Rhett, here's you talk directly to them, and it's just very good communication back and forth, very good people. And instead of felt like you were communicating with a publishing house, it felt like you were talking to people, which is a huge difference.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't exactly remember how long the process took, but eventually they reached out and they're like, yeah, we like it. We like it. We'd like to talk contracts. And it was just like, it was so surreal because it's that moment. It's like, this is what I've been working towards. This is a dream. This is the goal. And this is a milestone happening. And so based on Ben's experience with them, and I'd done a little research into them and the kind of things they published and contracts and tried to educate myself with all that. And they were spoken highly of, and they had a good body of work, and there just didn't seem to be any reason not to. And the contract was very simple, very straightforward, very easy to understand. It was basic in the best way that said, I'm not getting worked over here. We're looking to help each other. And
Right.
yeah, so that was, I would say it's very unique, and I count myself as very blessed that that's how it worked out, and that's the publisher, and that I landed with. So it just seemed like the natural flow, the open doors, and to follow that.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. And there's 4 books in the series right now. Is there going to be more, or is that the conclusion?
That's it's a two-part answer. Bear with me. So that is
Okay.
that is definitely the conclusion of Sean Pace's story, and that this timeline, the series of events, not timeline, the series of events. That said, I do have some rough plans for other books that could be done in the series in different times and different events, different characters, because I did enjoy that universe, that dynamic. There's other stories that could be told, especially no spoilers, but especially with two Zeta characters, Leo being one of them. There's certain histories there that I have mapped out and outlined because I had to have them there for this book. That I'm like, that'd be fun to write, and that could be a good book. And I had a few people ask about it. So down the road, there's enough demand for it. There could definitely be
That's
more
cool.
stories in the Terraverse.
And that fourth book just barely came out last month.
Hmm.
But since then you have pivoted. Well, not really since then. I mean, you worked on it, and you have a fantasy lit RPG book that you actually partnered with Ben to do. What was that process like? Did you have to have a mind shift to go from science fiction to kind of a fantasy setting? And what was the process with you and Ben writing the book together?
Yeah, yeah. It was. There's definitely a mindset shift to. I'll take the points as you said them, so I remember. But I had a bit of a head start in the sense of I did some work for a company that Ben and I worked for briefly together, where I was writing lit RPG. It was just kind of for audio content. So that definitely took a little work, but I've enjoyed video games throughout my life, and so it in a sense it's easy in that way because I understand there's certain core things you understand about them. It's easy. There's definitely I don't know why, but when I write in lit RPG, like my powers of description just start to like I don't know like there's a disconnect there. I feel like I don't write as much prose or as much description because I'm so focused on some of the elements, and I'm working at getting better on that. But so yeah, it was in the process of writing that little episodic content. It was a huge shift for me. But the video game stuff felt natural because it's like, I have wasted most of my life. I go, I got this. Finally, it pays off. So I already had that bit of experience dipping my toes into it, and then Ben and I had obviously worked together with him editing my work, and excuse me, he had a good idea of how I write, how I like to write, and through that process too, up until a big thing that happened as we were working on my books and as we went for we started becoming really good friends and we started spending a lot of time together where we could when we traveled down there. After my books were published, he was very gracious and invited me to the Comic Cons and shows to share a table with him and we'd hang out, just get together and we'd work together. And so that friendship just kept going, and I'm really thankful for that. So by the time we were working together with the episodic content, we were really good friends. And so then flash forward to when Ben had this idea. He kind of we had a very good ideas of how each other works. I'd read a lot of his books, and so he just threw it out there, and he's like, hey, would you want to co-write this? And I know, I like how you do characters and how you do story, and so we just started that dialogue, and so in a sense, I would sort of been primed to jump into Rickshaw that way, and but there was a huge learning, and still is, of like getting my descriptions nailed down, and almost like I write lit RPG almost frantically as though I were playing the game, and it's like relax, like nothing happens unless you write it, like chill. Uh, but it still is. There are parts that prove challenging to me because also I don't like dealing with stats and progression, and I have to. That part is work. I have to force myself. I have a kid, and we don't even go that far into it, but I still have my cheat sheet, and I still remember. Okay, this is level up, that level up, that some keeping to some of those dynamics can almost seem tedious, but it's also like, well, it's part of the story, it's part of the fun. And then as far as learning, like working with Ben in that process, it went very smooth. It has continued to go smooth, and I can only think that there are the reasons for that are partly too because we are really good friends. We share faith, we share values, we share similar stupid sense of humor. We do have times where like something will come up, and he or I'll say something, and like I was just thinking that word for word. And I've read a lot of his books. I love his writing style, how he writes action, how he weaves it together with his plot and with the moments of mirth and humor with the heavy elements. And he's expressed to me likewise, the way I write, and it complemented how I build characters and my character development. And so when he suggested writing together right away, he wanted to figure out like, okay, who's taking what responsibility. Let's have that very clear so there's no misunderstanding. Because again, we're really good friends, but sometimes things like this can really, it can put strain on that. And we were like, okay, how do we make sure we don't do that and work well together? And again, he's had way more experience with this sort of stuff than I have. So we went on a car ride back from a con, and we just were talking. And he's like, how would you like to handle this, that part of it? And he's like, if you trust me to, I'd like that. That's where I work better. That's where I excel. And he's like, yep, I'm totally okay with that. And I said, okay, well, marketing is not my strong suit. And then, obviously your editing skills and the things you want. So we just kind of hashed it out. And then he's like, all right, well, I'll drop a contract. We'll take a look at it. And if something we don't like, we'll amend it. And that's just kind of what we did. And then it was all like, okay, we're going to launch into this and see how it goes. And I feel very blessed. I'm very grateful to him. It went great. It went great. Like it seemed like it exceeded both of our expectations. And, it's also getting used to the fact that with Terra, that's my baby. That's my thought. It's very particular about that world. And it's a double-edged sword. Like in a sense, I don't have to be as particular because I am sharing this with someone. So it's like we have a business partner, we're carrying that. But the other edge of that sword is like there are certain things I have to and should let go because it's not just mine. I'm making something with someone. And since that was what we wanted to do and agreed to, it was easier. But I think that for any author thinking about a collaboration, have that firm in your mind that you are a contributor, not necessarily an owner. You may own the IP, but of the creative process. And obviously he had a similar gracious mindset, and we kept communication very well. Like if there was something that I was like, hey, I'm not really vibing with this. I'm wondering, can we change this or adapt it? And he's like, yeah, sure. And conversely, if he's like, hey, I'd like to kind of change this part. We need something better here, more stable. I'm like, all right, what you got? And then I think that's also where mutual humility and grace for one another and excitement to hear other ideas went a long way. And I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back. I'm saying it's a general principle. And I count myself very fortunate that it worked so well that way because I've heard many horror stories.
I have too.
Yeah.
I've interviewed lots of people that were like, I would never do that again, which is sad. But you did share some great tips, having humility, being open and communicating, having everything lined up beforehand. Like those are great tips for anybody who's looking to pursue something similar to that.
Yeah. And like I said, credit to Ben on that because he has done so much work in this field, in this world. He's a networker. He's really good with people. He's had co-writing experiences before, for better or for worse. And so he really knew how to lay this out and did really well with that and in guiding it and setting the terms and having our bases covered. So
No, that's fantastic. And you said you have shared booths at comic conventions,
yeah,
at
yeah.
conventions. What are some tips or tricks that you can share with people who are looking to do that and maybe haven't experienced that yet? What has been successful for you?
Sweet. Yeah. I would say first thing, this is not a shameless plug. This is just genuine advice. Ben has a book about live events called Power Author. It's the second one, I think, How to Master Live Events. I would say if you're really serious about it, that would be worth picking up because he is extremely good at it. And a lot of tips and tricks I learned from him. And yeah, so then for me, it was a learning process because again, creatives, we tend to be a little introverted, right? And the overstimulation is real. I have not done a con on my own thus far. I've had opportunities to, but I don't desire to as much because a part of the joy for me is seeing Ben and seeing the crowd that I know, my friends and the fellow circle of authors. Like, the whole sound booth crew was there when you were there, and then if we share the work too, setting up, taking down everything is like so. I would say if you have a partner or someone interested in doing this with you, or a group you can connect to. I understand that's not always the case, but if you have that opportunity, seize it, take care of it, and learn from those who do it as well, and then pitch in and help out. And it can open doors for you too, where someone's like, hey, share a booth, and or it can connect you to people like, oh, hey, did you hear about this con or that con? You should get in now, or you should contact them now, and it can just keep opening doors and having information you didn't previously have. Uh, and help you break into that world. Because again, it was sort of like everywhere I went, someone had kind of tread that territory, so there was something of a path to follow and learn from. Then, as far as interacting with people, well, I mean, man, you know how that can be. It's you, you rub shoulders with some colorful characters. It's really easy, right? You have to present your material. You have to have. I mean, are you cool getting into some of the sales aspect of it, or did you mean just strictly for?
Whatever
Um,
you want to share, like whatever tips you think would be beneficial. Like I'm open to anything.
oh God, yeah, geez, dude, you gave me a mic and just let me talk. It's like,
Yeah,
whew.
just go ahead. This is your show.
Oh man. But yeah,
You
so
you
and
are
then
the
having
laser master.
yeah, Dirk Laser Master. Uh, it's actually from a Star Wars YouTube parody, if I remember correctly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So instead of Luke Skywalker, it was Duke Laser Master or Dirk Laser Master.
That's funny.
So presentability too is a big thing. Is how even Jerry Shepard and T.R. Nickel and friends of ours they are so good at presentation and setting up an aesthetic booth because aesthetics do matter, right? Like even you can't judge a book by its cover, but what else do you have? Like you're gonna look at a cover and it's like, hey, that looks dope, or it's like, or
Right.
covers can give the wrong impression of the story. And it's similar concept when setting up a booth, when presenting it, like something that draws the eye, something that has that, and if you have any credentials like, award winning or this, that's like, put it up there, give yourself credibility. And not that that determines your value, but having anything to present to people for that credibility is a big deal.
Well,
And
one
then
thing I
just,
liked at Lit RPG, sorry to interrupt.
no, please go ahead.
Um,
Go ahead.
so if you look at the book, you got the shorts on there, and you
Mm-hmm.
guys were dressed up like that. So like you had, you both had tank tops, you had board shorts on. So that was a great marketing thing at a booth to kind of celebrate the launch of Rickshaw. So I mean, you guys did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Totally. We had way too much fun thinking about that. And when he's like, oh, I can get this pattern printed. Oh, we can get the actual shorts. And I'm like, do it. Don't even hesitate. And so having those to present and just, yeah, like, it's just funny. It draws the attention. Even the little plushy octopuses we had there or Carjock, I'm sorry, Carjock for Silas. And it's fun. It gives people a level of engagement and helps a person not take themselves too seriously either. Like we're here to sell and promote, but we're here to enjoy and engage too. And that's so yeah, it all factors in anything you can and having a uniqueness because I would say to you creatives out there, you do have something to contribute that has not been yet. You do have a fun angle to add. You do have weight and something to bring. So yeah, lean into it and refine it. You like I said, like the unrefined gold, right? The more you work on it and polish it, you can get better at it. You don't get stagnant with it, but you can keep progressing. And so setting up the booth in that presentable way, having these things and or gimmicks or your octoboxers, and then being personable, being able to relate to people. Granted, I know we're all at different levels of being able to engage socially, and it's not that you have to be something you're not, but there are things that can be learned and conditioned, like exercise, right? You get stronger at it, you get better at it. And it takes a little time. You're going to make some mistakes. You're going to put your foot in your mouth. You might have, and sometimes the shows just don't go well, right? Like, depending on why you're there, people aren't interested in much as in books or toys or whatever you have to bring. And they're there to see X, Y, and Z voice actor, or they're there to dress in something really tight and parade around. I don't know.
Well, and that's what's good. We met at Lit RPG Con, and that's what's good about that is because it was specifically for Lit RPG and fandom. So like it
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
yeah. I love Comic Cons. I go to Comic Cons, but I always tell people it's usually it's different. It's like five different shows. There's the art. There's people who want to go just for the art. There's the books that people want to go to. There's the actors that people want to go to. Then
yeah.
there's the toys that all the merch that's there that people go for specifically for that. And then you have like the panels and stuff that people go specifically for that. And there's even a sixth thing. It's kind of not as much, but like even the cosplay. Like there's cosplay competitions and stuff that people specifically go for. So like it's a big difference going to a big Comic Con to a smaller lit RPG convention like that. It's totally different atmosphere.
Big time. Yeah. or even like some of them are more almost craft focused. Like Ben's
Yeah,
done a few smaller craft shows, and
or
so yeah,
even
it's
game
all
focused.
yeah. Like the one we went to Phoenix Con recently in Appleton, and that one's a big tabletop gaming, and it's really cool because they've got D&D, they've just hundreds of board games going at once. They've got a LARP room where you just beat each other with foam swords, and so yeah, they all have their I don't want to say demographic, but there's certain element. And I mean too, and if you have a wide body of work, like say you have books and you do 3D printing, or you the more you have to present to, the wider you can. Ben has so many genres too that it's kind of like, what do you like to read? Oh, I like to read this and that. Oh, yes, I have that. So having a good body of work too, and then from the sales element, it's you get better at it. It's a tough thing because you have to essentially market yourself and your ideas,
Right,
and you want to be genuine, but you also want to like, I want to make this appealing. And the easy part is you should believe in it because you made it. Like you made it for a reason, so you must think it's worth something. But then embracing that and saying, without having an inflated ego or letting that go to your head, but still believing I made something that I think will contribute something to this person that they will enjoy. I am very confident that I made something that is enjoyable.
right.
And it's okay to have that confidence. If someone doesn't enjoy it, it's like, well, okay, but I still believe people will. And so
I
I'd say
actually like that point, like not taking it too personal, because
yeah,
it's like sharing chocolate chip cookies, right? Like not everybody likes your brand of chocolate chip cookies, but there's lots of people that do. So yeah, I like that analogy.
100%, 100%, because it can be hard to take, but some people just want to be mean. They do. You have people, negative people, but realizing it's not going to appeal to everyone. But I still think this will appeal to people, that it's something enjoyable. And two, whether they like it or not doesn't necessarily determine how good it is, and it certainly doesn't impact your value or what you have to contribute.
Right.
And I stress that because I know that can be a pitfall for people, and I know it was for me for a really long time too. And uh, sometimes it's always something you have to fight against. But then learning, I think big thing is learning your pitch, right? Pitch is a big deal. There's classes on it. There's reason, you know, um, I really wish I could remember the name of the author. Oh man, he it was at the big conference in Vegas. It's called Author Nation now. At the time it was 20 books to 50K. But so to quote him, this is not coming from me, but he was saying about the pitch, like he likened it to this cook and saying like, "How is your eggs Benedict?" And he asked that question, and the cook was just like, "Oh, the Holland," and he described where the ingredients came from and how they were put together. Like he just presented it, and he said, "You know what? Yeah, it was a good eggs Benedict, but I enjoyed it way more, because of that presentation and how much confidence and joy he had in it." And it's the same thing with your book. I really wish I could remember his name so I could credit him because it was brilliant. But it's the same way. Like and then having a good pitch, but also remembering you have an attention span window. And you want to try to keep it in there, and that takes time and trial and error. And but when someone sees you get excited about, I mean, just think about when a friend or when someone comes up and they're like, "Oh, this new thing," and you see that passion and excitement. It's like you have that for what you're presenting, the story you're sharing. It's good, have it, and it will communicate to people.
That's
And
awesome.
then all those things combined, you'll get better at, and generally you can do very, very well at live shows. So
Awesome. No, that's great advice. Luke, I appreciate you getting on with me. Go ahead and tell people how they can get your books, get a hold of you if you want, and any conventions that are coming up for you.
sure, sure. So all of my books are on Amazon or Athon. So if you go to athonbooks.com, and they got a great selection from a bunch of great authors, check out there. I'm on Amazon. For right now, that be looking forward to Rickshaw, which again next year it will be Kindle, it will be physical copy, and it will be audio.
Awesome.
So yeah, very excited about that. Reach out to me. You can generally email me. I'm really not on the socials, but if you can get to Ben Wolf, you can get to me. And in any of my books and on my Amazon author page, my email is there, and so is Discord. And I'm happy to hear from anyone. I'm happy to take questions. If you want to know anything, please reach out.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate you getting on with me today.
Thanks, Carson. It was an honor and a privilege, and I appreciate the talk.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Troy Podcast. Please subscribe, like, and share with your friends.